Thanks for doing this.
All right. I am here with Janelle and Jason, the Throws Factory, and you know them as well with the Throws podcast. Before we get into the podcast, if you could both give us a little bit of your athletic background as well as pertaining to the throws.
Okay, I'll start. I started throwing basically in the ninth grade, my freshman year. I had a coach that was a big influence in my throwing career. He basically kind of taught me a kind of an old school glide. Wound up my freshman year almost throwing right at 57 feet out with the glide. And from there, he wound up leaving the school, wound up going in a different direction in his coaching career. And basically that's kind of when my throwing career started to decline. And my senior year, I only improved like basically 8 more inches to get over almost 58 feet and had one of the farthest throws in the state of Texas. But as I got to the regional meet, and I've told this story before, I basically kind of choked. And I didn't really have a support system there because I had to turn into my own self-coach then. And had the desire, I had the ambition. I thought I had the work ethic, but as far as the actual technical side or maybe somebody to give me some words of encouragement, I didn't have much there. And I was also a multi-sport athlete. I played football, I played baseball, also played basketball all in high school. And then I had opportunity to receive a scholarship for football after, my high school career was over, and wound up attending Northwestern State University in Natchez, Louisiana on a football scholarship. And then my freshman year, there was a verbal agreement to allow me to go and throw. And in the springtime after the fall season was over, when track started, we were allowed to go out there and throw some of the football players. And that basically lasted about a month, because then I was basically told if I wanted the opportunity to play and start as a freshman, that I needed to go through spring ball and I couldn't throw anymore. And it was a difficult situation because I wanted to throw. My passion was, partly throwing. That's what I've always did. And it was kind of my new fresh start to compete, in an individual sport, and something that I didn't get with being a multi-sport athlete by playing a lot of team sports.
Right.
And unfortunately, it just kind of didn't work out. And I met a guy who turned to be one of my best friends, who's now the head track coach at Northwestern State. And he was a thrower there, and we kind of bonded. And one thing I appreciate is when we would have those conversations during his seasons of watching him do rotational shot put and work on his technique and Olympic lifting, I was actually paying attention, and I was actually taking some mental notes. And he did a good job of teaching, some of the stuff that he was learning, because I was there kind of as a support system for him, and he was there for a support system for me, being a football player. And so it was good. And so that was a lasting impression that I had. And then my football career was very successful, 4-year starter, all conference, all Louisiana, all those accolades, and had the opportunity to go play professional football afterwards. Bounced around all 3 leagues, but never really hit on. And then I had a major injury and basically threw in the towel with that. And then got into high school coaching. Was my first year out. I was very blessed in the state of Texas to get an offensive coordinator job at a 4A school in Southeast Texas. And I was down there for about 3 to 4 years and met a kid in 2000. And when I met him, good-looking kid, 6'5", 280 pounds, just basically country strong. And we just kind of had this connection. And in his senior year, the kid wound up going from a no-star athlete to being a 3-star athlete, full ride to Texas A&M. In the springtime of his senior year, broke the deadlift record for super heavyweights and powerlifting, and threw glide 64 feet. From there, he was getting a lot of recognition for doing multi-sports, and it was something that I just kind of took a philosophy, and I took what my self-coaching was when I was in high school and what I've learned and what I threw and all that type of stuff, and just kind of molded and experimented with him and trial and error, and it just kind of stuck. And next thing you know, he's throwing 64 feet, and he's going to possibly win state. And so, how the Throwing Factory started was a unique situation. Is he comes back to me about 4 years ago, and he is a father now, being very successful in the business world. But his two kids are wanting to throw, and he wants to introduce them. And the most flattering comment he gave me is he wanted me to coach his kids like I coached him. And I was like, okay. And so from that conversation to working with his kids was the opportunity. Says, you need to get back into coaching because of the influence you had in my life. And I'll always appreciate that, 20 years ago or 17 years ago. And next thing you know, I'm getting with the United States Track and Field, filing all the paperwork to start the Throwing Factory for the club. And we've been off and running ever since.
Yeah, that dilemma you had as the two-sport athlete at the collegiate level is the same one that Bryce Foster is now facing.
Yes.
And I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and he's trying to find a college that will let him do both. He's insistent upon that.
Yeah, I've gave him some words of advice too when I saw him down at indoor for Texas A&M in January. It's a tough situation.
Of course.
25 years ago, some people would do it. I just I had a conversation with somebody like 3 or 4 days ago about Jonathan Ogden when he was at UCLA under Art Venegas.
Right.
And he was able to balance football and been able to, throw shot put for Art, and I think placed third his senior year in the NCAAs behind Godina, who won it.
Right.
And, and then he was a first-round draft pick, and now he's a Hall of Famer.
Right. And then
you don't see much of that. You don't see much of that. I just think because the NCAA has put so much time, into football and practice, and it's a job, and they have to honor those scholarships and stuff. To be a two-sport athlete for a male is pretty tough.
And then all of a sudden, his last name escapes me. From Wisconsin, will be in the Hall of Fame. Lineman, Cleveland Browns.
Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas. There we go.
Yes.
So it can happen. It's rare, but it can happen.
Yeah, it can. It can. You would like to see those throwers get a little bit more time. They really go hand in hand. You find a lot of kids who are talented enough to do both, but the mental concept of doing both, they may not want to struggle with because they're being encouraged so hard to do football 24/7, especially in the state of Texas, that something like throwing is like, oh, I can't do that. And there's might be a lack of knowledge. I don't know what it is where they don't feel really comfortable being successful. Bryce is a unique situation that, he's had some good coaches for throwing and some good coaches for football to put him in this situation.
No doubt. Janelle, what's your background?
Well, I grew up in a small town playing basketball, doing every sport possible, track, all that kind of stuff. I threw the discus in high school, went to regionals back in the day and was super close to going to state. Didn't quite make it. And really from there, that was kind of the bulk of my high school career in throwing. I went and played basketball at junior college for 2 years. But then I have been coaching. I'm about to start year 25 of coaching. And through that have coached numerous throwers at various places in the Panhandle and all around Texas, at state and different times. And then my daughter, she was a high school thrower. Actually was a state champion power lifter.
Okay.
And then went to state in the discus when she was in high school, and also threw at Stephen F. Austin for 3 years. She was one of those above average high school athletes and just a really good college athlete. She had a great experience, learned a lot, being able to be an athlete in college at a Division I school, earned a point at every meet she was at.
There you go.
Coach Olson up at SFA loved her because she was kind of like the team captain, the glue that kept the team together. So that really got me more involved in throwing, was watching her do something I didn't know as much about, especially when she picked up a hammer. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. She had a injury in her shoulder her senior year at the state meet, and just tears after every throw. She even had one throw that was about 80 feet. And she was like, that was embarrassing, but she was injured. So didn't get to continue throwing discus in college, and picked up just hammer and shot put. but really loved it. Was just there 3 years, had enough hours, was an outstanding student, and did what she needed and got out into the real world. But I've coached numerous throwers and just love track. And that's kind of, that connection that we have is that track connection.
Yeah.
So
well, her PR was 113 at that regional meet.
It was 113. And the football coaches wanted me. They were like, come out here and throw shot put. I'm not a small person. They were like, come throw the shot put. Well, they didn't really tell me how to throw it. So I picked it up because I was a basketball player, played some basketball in college. I picked it up and I shot it and I, rolled off the back of my fingers, and they were like, never mind.
Yeah. Her discus technique was a combination of Michael Jackson moonwalk, half turn South African, off 1 foot support, to throw 113.
My coach did the best that he could, and he loved coaching me. But it was a small 1A school, and he was a football coach, and he'd come out and be like, "Well, try this." And right before regionals, I think I threw in practice. I don't even know that I'd ever broke 100, but where I was at, you could get to regionals, and then in practice, I break 100, and then at regionals, throw 113. So
there you go.
That was awesome.
That's still not a bad throw.
My daughter hit a 147.8, so she likes to rub that in my face. I was like, you had way better coaching. We went one summer to California and did a John Gadina camp the summer
there you go.
Her senior year. So I was like, I invested some more time in your throwing ability than I did in my own. So,
well, Coach Olson will be speaking on both shot and disc at our winter clinic.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Nice guy. Very nice guy.
He is a great guy. He's the reason my daughter chose SFA.
So how weird does it feel weird being in front of a camera instead of behind a microphone?
It does. It feels weird having to answer the questions instead of ask them.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm sure you've listened to our podcast, she's the editor. So she handles all the recording and all this stuff. And she makes me sound like an intelligent redneck instead of a baffling redneck.
All right.
And so
let's talk about the podcast. I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but we just finished the 11th podcast.
Yes, correct.
Of the 11, the most interesting podcast so far, or your most favorite?
The most interesting for me, I'll probably say it was Sammy Walker.
Okay.
Just because, Sammy's in his 70s, and to listen to him talk and see him through Zoom, you thought that his wrists were wraps, and he had on gliding shoes, and he's about to go throw right now, just because of the passion and love he had for throwing. And
he's got an encyclopedic memory.
Say again?
He has an encyclopedic memory for these throws.
Yes. And from what he accomplished in holding the high school record to what he did at SMU, it was just great listening. It was great insight. I don't want to say he was a godfather of throwing shot put in the state of Texas, but he kind of maybe paved the way for a football player and a thrower to be able to pursue that in college, so to speak. And to be a power lifter and to be an Olympic lifter at that, which at that time was kind of unheard of. I didn't really hear about Olympic lifting until probably my junior, senior in high school, and he was doing it in the 60s. Yeah,
and you're right. A lot of people don't know he obviously was one of the world's great weightlifters.
Yes. And to hear his story about 1980 and them boycotting the Olympics because of the Cold War, and him telling the story about Randy Galloway calling him up and saying, hey, Carter's boycotted the Olympics, and Sammy thought it was Michael Carter. To hear him tell that story is hilarious. And I will say this, and he got on a little bit of some tangents on some stories and stuff, and some of the stuff we had to edit out, but it was great entertainment to listen to him talk about Oldfield and his experience of throwing. And just the love and passion that he had for it was probably one of the most interesting, and also probably if I had to pick a real favorite, was probably the Chris and Chandler Crowley and their story of how they met and Chris's trials and tribulations of becoming of a elite hammer thrower. And so I had I've heard of Chris, through college and stuff with my connection with Mike. And Mike always told me about this guy from Sam Houston State who was, was crazily intense when he threw and screamed and all this type of stuff. And to then meet Chris and talk to Chris and become really good friends with Chris, he's not the same person. And it was really shocking to hear stories of folklore of this person and, him bigger than life. And then to meet Chris, and Chris is very quiet, very humble, and just the good-hearted person you've ever met. And to hear the stories of how he threw and what he did in the Olympic trials, and then how him and Chandra met, and him proposing with a ring pop, and them getting married in a hammer ring, and at Wichita State University. You can't get better than that.
No, that's a thrower's life right there.
Yes, it is.
Janelle, what's one of your favorite memories so far?
Oh, I think I was sitting here while Jason was talking. Maggie Malone, Haley Till, and Duke Kaczynski, all three of those kind of are all together, because just listening to their passion for what they're doing, they're still so young, and still trying to branch out there and to be a professional thrower, but their story about how hard they work to get where they are. I think I was just sitting like this most of the time, just listening to it, thinking, wow, they are just, one of those elite athletes that gets it, because having coached for so long, you like crave kids like that, and they get it, and they wanted to do, they're willing to do whatever it took to make sacrifices, learning new stuff. Haley Till's excitement when she talked about throwing this past February, with Michelle Carter and all these other big throwers, and they're just so passionate about it. And I hate it that they didn't get a chance to do any Olympics this year, but they're all just so positive about, we're just going to keep working at it and shooting for the next go. How it gives them time is what they looked at as. It just gave us time to get better, to improve what we needed to.
Well, as of yesterday, we're exactly 1 year away from the Olympics. So.
1 year away.
Yeah. And
please.
You can tell everybody that we've talked to had that drive, and I think some of it, and that's kind of our Texas style that we kind of coined that with our little niche is, they all work hard. There's not a one person that didn't come across that we talked to afterwards that we weren't like, that person's going to make it, and I wouldn't be as shocked in a year from now if Haley, if Maggie and Duke, they're all on the team and they all have great success. It's just been a great experience for getting to know these people, outside of their competition world, and getting to know them as people as well, and kind of their mindset. Yeah.
And what a great last year for Duke, obviously coming off his own title, let alone the Texas Tech team title.
Yeah. And that was interesting because, Duke was one of our earlier episodes. So we were kind of learning and going as we were trying to do this thing. And, he was opened and kind of was like, hey, I'll be on and stuff. And man, he was a tremendous guest and shared a lot. We really try to put the podcast out there to really kind of educate and help young throwers and young coaches and stuff. Cause that's kind of, I feel there's a niche in the state of Texas, and that's kind of missing. And so we want to create some interest, and we want to get more throwers out there, but we also want to get better educated coaches and kids to have better understanding of how to throw. And if they listen to one of our people on our podcast and they can take something from it and apply it, man, we've hit the gold medal, like I've said before. But Duke was tremendous. And, I've had a couple of kids who, after the podcast, have listened to that, and they go up and, they watch videos of him when he was at Texas Tech, and they were down at Texas, and he threw the 208, and they were like, well, why did he close his arm down like this? And, did you see how back he was on the axis? And, his turn was tied out of the back. And I'm like, yeah, that's how he did it. But, he did it,
So where did the origin for the podcast come from?
Say that again.
Where did the origin for the podcast?
Well, it was, when the whole COVID-19 hit, we were kind of, my main job is in some sales, and, she was home on spring break from her coaching and teaching gig. And so I've kind of became fond of Joe Frontier and Madison Throws Club and Throw Big, Throw Far podcast.
Right.
And so I couldn't go to the gym and work out. And so we kind of turned our garage into a weight room and doing some lifting and stuff. And so we'd always do some cardio before. And I kind of started to listen to Joe's podcast. And then fortunately I got invited to do some virtual symposiums and do some talks and sit on, some coaches talk and all this type of stuff. And the one thing I really never heard in these entire situation was anything coming from Texas. I was like the only person on the talk or on the Zoom from Texas. Nobody really had any throwers talking about Texas. There was no talk about, these rising stars coming out of Texas or anything like that. I just thought to myself, I said, where's our voice? Why don't we have some kind of national presence in the throwing world, so to speak? And in a conversations with Joe, I kind of told him what I was going to do, picked his brain on kind of how, he formatted his podcast and stuff. And he was like, man, if I was you, I would do it. He goes, I think you got a winner. And I took his advice, and Janelle and I just kind of started, brainstorming this thing. And, she did some research on how to get it out there and, how we edit the podcast and all that. And we just turned in the paperwork, and next thing you know, we got a podcast. And so the reception of everybody and the response has just been overwhelming. Everybody, and we're not going to brag. We've like 800 downloads or something like that. Yeah.
800 something.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's good in the podcasting world, but to us, it seems great.
So, the response has been really good. And the shows that will be coming out that we've already recorded are just tremendous. The show coming out Sunday is one you definitely want to listen to. I would encourage everybody to listen to it, because it's important that you do listen to it, because the woman is amazing and she does have an amazing story. So that's kind of how it started. And we've got better with our editing. I sound better. I don't mumble. I don't cuss as much. So, so she makes me sound good, and the people have been patient. And I think too, because we do this as a married couple, and it kind of relaxes people, and it's more of a conversation wise.
Right.
And then they just kind of open up and talk with it. And, it's been great. We love it. It's made us closer as a couple, because we talk about it, something that we do together. And it's kind of created a bond for us, and we're already planning season 2 and getting new sponsorships, and, hopefully going to turn this thing into something, big, not only for us, but for the state of Texas and the throwers in it.
You've interviewed Sammy Walker.
Yes.
One of the greats, all-time throws, not just Texas, but internationally.
Yeah.
You've interviewed Coach Woolman,
Yes.
one of the best throws coaches in the world.
Yes.
All right. Who else do you have targeted as dream interviews?
Oh, dream?
Yes.
Well, dream. Ryan Krauser. Because I want to hear, about his time in Texas, especially being an Oregon guy. I want to have Coach Carter and Michelle on, and I would also try to have DeAndre on all at the same time, because I think that would be really good for everybody to hear, and everybody's familiar with their individual stories. But something you might not hear about is kind of all three of them growing up, in the same house. Not all three of them growing up in the same household.
Right,
Two of them growing up in the same household, with their father being, a great thrower and a great professional football player, but also their coach as well. Would be a dream one.
It was, hold on one second. It was just announced either yesterday or today that DeAndre is going to be inducted into the Texas Tech Hall of Fame.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, congratulations to her. She deserves it. Yeah, Texas Tech has had a history of great throwers.
No doubt.
Falcon's done a heck of a job up there.
Yes, he has.
For sure. Yeah. I would also say we have a couple lined up, and I've kind of talked, and hopefully they'll be on season 2. Will be Mike Stoltz.
Okay.
And then I'm real excited about this one, and she's having some health problems, but we're going to wait a little while, hopefully, to get her on. Will be Regina Kavanaugh as well,
Okay.
rice thrower.
Yeah.
And then Dana Duluth, maybe.
Okay.
If you know that.
I know Dana well.
Yeah. I would like to have a couple of college coaches on as well. I've asked a couple people and they agreed to do it. And then with the NCAAs and how that changes with COVID every week, that they can talk, they can't talk, they can talk. Right. It was just probably in everybody's best interest that they not talk and kind of stay away from that, but maybe have something like that. The discus thrower that came out of Angelo State last year or 2 years ago.
What's her name?
I can't think of her name. Tall, lanky girl. She won Texas Relays her senior year. I can't think of her name, but I've actually talked to the throwing coach out there, and he's kind of put me in touch with her. So hopefully down the road she might be on. Randy Barnes.
Okay.
Just anybody that we could get on. If you have any type of connection, I'm working on Valerie Allman. So Valerie, if you're listening, please respond to my email and text, and we'd love to have
connections. I have connections to several names. So after we're done recording, just stay on for a moment. I'll share with you.
Good. Yeah. And we've also branched out, and that's something that we've done is in a couple of weeks, Tim Swartz will be on. United States track and field, not track and field, but United States track with weightlifting international level coach Rio Gaines, Coach Sarah Robles, has a amazing nonprofit down in Houston. He's going to be on, or we've already recorded for him, I should say. He'll be on in 2 weeks. It'll be published in 2 weeks from him. And that was a great experience of tying in throwing into Olympic lifting. And what that means, because you hear stuff around the country, of other people doing their Olympic lifting, and you see them, they're great throwers and all that type of stuff. And I just thought to myself, some of our high school kids might not be getting proper instruction, a proper understanding of what a snatch is, or a clean and jerk, and how to work some auxiliary lifts that pertain to those two lifting events. And so I thought it was good to have Tim on, and I think we're going to do some more stuff like that with Tim in the future, or some other people as well.
Awesome. What have the both of you learned about coaching from your podcasts?
You get your first.
That's a great question. After we listened to Dave Woman, we were just sponges soaking everything in. He soaks in a lot more of the technical stuff. I soak in a lot more of the, just how to coach kids, because I work with middle school kids, and I have several younger coaches under me that I work with and mentor them. And so we were both like, oh, wow, we feel like we're not the best coaches.
Yeah. When you just listen, when you listen to Dave talk to his athletes, he takes something so complicated and makes it so simple for them, they can't help but PR.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And just different things that he said, and I can't remember now because we've had several since then, but I wrote them down. I was like, oh gosh, I got to remember that. Just hoping that to use those in whatever I'm coaching kids, whether it's just an off-season workout or basketball or whatever. He just has such great nuggets of wisdom, and it's just so calm and patient.
Right.
Just calm and patient. And I like that a lot. I learned that.
Have you ever gone up to watch him coach on Sundays?
I have not.
I have once, and just as a courtesy, I went up there and just introduced myself, because just, being his back of the woods, I just wanted to, kind of introduce myself and kind of let him know who we were and kind of what we were doing, that we didn't want to we're stepping on his toes or anything like that, just out of respect. But I've always admired him from the distance and knew who he was, just because, he's been at SMU for so long. And, me personally, growing up in East Texas, I always kind of thought SMU, back when I was growing up, was like, oh my God, that's the coolest school in the world in downtown Dallas. And so I've kind of followed in his footsteps, but I just think that what I've learned is, it's with throwing, there's no such thing as perfection. And we get caught up in trying to be technical experts and gurus and stuff. And, our model's the right way and we do this. But at the same time, everybody's different. And some people have a certain technical model they do and they throw really far, but somebody else has a technical model that's totally different that, sometimes may not make sense, but they throw the same distance that, the other one did. And it's almost like there's multi-stones to kill a bird instead of just one or two. And, for us and at the throwing factory, that's kind of how we coach our kids is we're going to fit the technical aspect that fits that kid, whether that kid's a great athlete, tall and lanky, or that kid's a not very good athlete that's not very flexible, but she has the drive and passion to show up every day. We're going to put her in the best situation to throw far. And talking with these Olympic athletes, and hearing their technical changes, I remember Maggie Malone, she was taught one way to hold the javelin when she was at Nebraska, and then she transfers to A&M and Chico down there, De La Garza, who I've actually known for years, changes everything. And so my question to her is, well, how big adjustment was that? And, she's just like, well, I believed in him. We wanted to change it, and she did. And, she probably wouldn't have made it to the Olympics and had the success she did if she didn't change her grip. Would she have made the Olympics with the same grip that she came out of Nebraska? Who knows? But she believed in her coach. He believed in her. They thought it was the best situation, and they did it. So for me, when I coach my kids, I don't want to say we're always going to be experimenting, but we're going to be trying to fit what's best for them to throw far and be successful, and they can have great success.
There you go. Coach the athlete, not the event.
Yes.
Love it. Janelle, what's your favorite throwing event?
My hammer. And I can't throw the hammer. I don't know how to do the turn, but I love watching the hammer. When my daughter was learning it, she would walk around the house after she went to that John Gadina camp and like stop and do the turns. And I'd be like, how do you do that? And so I just got where I love the hammer. I love Chandler and Chris come out sometimes to help with our kids. And I sometimes I think I want to pick it up and try it, but I know better. I'll hurt something. We'll have to call 911. Yeah. But I just love watching the hammer because, and Chris I kind of bought into this because he says you don't have to be an athlete to do it. I think you do, but your stature can be whatever. And I was like, how do you not have to be an athlete to spin in a circle like that and not get dizzy? To me, that requires some athletic ability, but I love watching the hammer.
Yeah. Chris and Chandler tried to make her do a couple of turns, and it was pretty funny to watch her do some turns. They even with the PVC pipe, and they had this little hammer dance they do, kind of in the back of the ring to do the heel toe, and she did it okay.
No, and my daughter she knew that. She'd be like, Mom, please stop.
So the goal, Stuart, is this is going to be the next master thrower, my first one. So we're going to get her up to 125 in the discus, maybe a couple of turns in the shot put. During the COVID, I tried to teach her to do javelin, and that didn't work out well. She almost killed the dog 2 or 3 times with the javelin.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was an ugly experience.
Yeah, javelin's not my thing.
So how has it gone this summer? Because come spring break, and I coach also, I coach the verticals, and come spring break, it was like the world athletically, not just track and field, just shut down. How have you guys maintained not only with your club, but training and then more time alone, obviously, to launch the podcast?
It's been oh my gosh, I don't know if we have enough time to talk about this. It was almost like a little gut punch where, from a club standpoint, we were doing really well in our indoor meets, and the kids was really building some big marks to get ready for outdoor. And I had 2 or 3 seniors that were having ambitions and hopes that they were going to get into Texas relays, and we were really excited about going
Right.
down there and them competing against the best throwers in the state. And for one of them, it was going to be a wholly new experience for her. And then I had some younger kids, just based on where they go to school, their junior high season didn't start at all. And so they've been busting their tail to go out and show what they can do. And basically they didn't even have a season. And, and then another girl, she was fortunate enough that her school district, they had 2 or 3 meets early to start their junior high year. And she was able to get some marks in, but, she threw big in the beginning, but then, there was no improvement after that. And, it was a little frustrating because we were building up for her. And then all of a sudden she's home for 3 to 4 weeks and no access to throwing and all that type of stuff. She lost a little bit, and we almost had to kind of start all over. From a business standpoint, we were doing a lot of privates. Janelle basically does all of my 12 and under lessons with all the kids that, call up wanting lessons or shot puts and stuff. We just kind of let them go to her first to kind of do the foundation and the basics. And then
And
when
so
they get,
he doesn't scare them off.
I don't scare them off. And, but that was, there was less interest to do that. And, we were doing some,
I understand.
I was basically doing private lessons pretty much every day. And then all of a sudden that just kind of stopped, and we had to stop our training and stuff. And, for those seniors that were almost in the middle of their season and for it to be taken away and all of a sudden stopped, or a couple of juniors that were, having tremendous marks and were ready to go to state and have that opportunity to get possibly recruited with their marks. And it was just all kind of shut down. And you're just like, wow, what's going to happen next? What are they going to be able to do to kind of salvage this thing? And we were lucky, that in Tarrant County, they kind of opened up the reins a little bit before they opened up Dallas County. And so we were able to get out maybe in small groups sooner than other people were to maybe do some throwing. Very fortunate for me that we are blessed with tremendous parents, and they love the throws. They love watching their kids throw, and they're so supportive that, they wanted to do some training and stuff. So we kind of, did small individual trainings, for sessions of 2s or 3s or something like that. So we were able to kind of pick back up and go, and move forward with that. And we're able to actually do a couple of summer meets. So yeah. And then it was allowed her to had more time to do the editing with the podcast because she wasn't in school as well.
Who are okay, let's say the 2021 season, fingers crossed, we're good to go. We don't have to mess with the schedule. Who are some of the athletes that you guys work with that we should know because they're going to make a run into whether it's the district, regional, or perhaps even a state meet?
Probably my top one is a unique story, is a young lady actually out in West Texas that I actually train online. And her name is Macy Irons, and she will be a senior at Monahans, Texas.
Okay.
And
is that 1A or 2A?
No, that's actually 4A.
Is it a 4A? Okay.
Yeah, it's actually 4A. And very unique story of how we crossed paths, but the family and I just kind of crossed paths, and Macy and I kind of developed a connection. And Macy's at top of her class. So, she's one of those girls that you can tell her verbally, and she can just retain it, and then her body can just do it immediately because she's so athletic. And so she's starting to get some offers and interests and looks and stuff like that. And she was one that was really peaking there in her junior year. I think she won every shot put meet that she went to. And then we went out to the AAU Southwest Indoors in Albuquerque, New Mexico in February. And she threw right under 43 feet and broke the indoor record there for that AAU meet. And it was a big mark for her. That was almost like a 2 feet improvement. And she was going to be able to take that and carry that into to her season and get ready for state. But all of a sudden, no go. I have another girl that's a little lower on the radar out of Weatherford, Texas, named Olivia Thomas. And she's a girl that is going to work hard and show up on time and be there all the time. And she's going to be the one that's going to stay there late. She's kind of late to throwing. She's one that when I first met was very kind of reserved. I don't want to say timid, but a little shy. And the biggest thing with her is we've seen so much growth just with her mentally.
Confidence.
And that, she really cares about throwing. And fortunately enough that we've had a few connections and people call and have showed interest in her. And hopefully, with bigger marks and stuff like that and picking up the hammer, she's one who's starting to learn the hammer. She was a state qualifier in powerlifting as a junior in the super heavyweights and ranked pretty high and didn't even get to go. And this was the overlap right before her track season. And so, as far as strength, she's unbelievable in the weight room. But she didn't get to display that or compete for a state title in powerlifting because of the COVID-19.
Right.
So, and then I have a boy that's a rising star, Lucas Williams, that's going to be at Colleyville Heritage. And Lucas just came to me through the whole COVID thing, and just all of a sudden we've just picked up rotational shot put where he didn't have much coaching or teaching, and he's starting to get it down to show some big marks. Picked up the hammer as well. And he's a kid that's very unique that I don't want to say this publicly, but if you probably asked him which his favorite sport is, he would probably say throwing over football, but he does both. Mm-hmm. And he loves to throw and he studies throwing and he's already went up to 162, 163. And that's from a previous PR in February or March, I think, where he threw 151. And so he has aspirations of going to state his junior year and hopefully his senior year. And maybe I'll have some doors open with some marks that, hopefully he'll be able to achieve.
Awesome. So when the world has settled down and I'm ready to talk to TAPS and UIL about bringing in the javelin, I have your support.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. It would be such an easy event to bring into an already crowded schedule and help get the throwers some more love.
Yes. We are, and I've actually, because of my coaching connections with what I did before I, got out of coaching and stuff, and people I don't want to say they knew me, but I was blessed that people knew me and I was able to have some connections and stuff with UIL, is I'm pushing and wanting track and field to be year round in the state of Texas. I want a better opportunity for throwers to be able to throw year round, have more attempts to throw, with the finals besides just going to their district area and regional meets. It's unfair for those kids. And I think that's why there's such a stigmatism of kids not being able to pursue college and love throwing more, which depletes the numbers and depletes the opportunity to be recruited for recruiters, is because they go to these meets, they get 3 throws. It's not like what they do in the football season where they, there's not an organized warm up. They don't, it's a totally different aspect. They're really jaded off of it. They don't have immediate success and they just feel defeated. And they're like, okay, no, I'm not doing that again. And I just feel like that, we need to give these throwers and kids more opportunity to be successful. If you look at it during a track season for, say, a varsity kid, let's say he goes to 8 meets prior to his district meet. He gets 24 throws, maybe plus or minus 2 to 3 more.
Next finals,
and that's without the finals. And, then hopefully he's good enough to get out of, his district and get out of his area. But man, if he's 5'10", 5'11", and plays guard at 220, he's not going to be recruited to be an offensive lineman, no. Maybe at a D3. But according to Art Vegas, if he's 5'10" and has really good feet, he might be a good rotational shot putter.
Right.
And we want to give him the opportunity to learn rotational shot put and give him an opportunity to go out and throw more than 24 throws, hypothetically, to go out and be successful. And he might say, okay, this might be something that I can pursue after college, and it might be, after high school, and it might be something that I really want to do. And I just think that, we need to figure something out and get rid of this mindset that we have to do football 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we can't do another sport that applies speed and power and balance and just overall competing, that there's so much overlap that the kids just don't really understand that. So
so in the same way that the pole vaulters have all these off-season competitions, whether it's down in Belton at the Expo or the big one up in Reno, and almost every week in January, February before the season they go unattached to Joshua, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for a little throw circuit.
And I'm all for that. And I've actually talked to some people locally about trying to do some stuff like that. It's just, my dream, and I'm gonna let people know this, is we're in a process of buying hopefully a couple of acres. And my goal and dream is to build a throwing park. And every kid that wants to come and throw, we're going to open those gates and we can negotiate a price or whatever, but we'll flip on the lights and they want to stay out there for 5 or 6 hours, they can throw. And we're going to have a hammer out there and there's going to be shot put rings. And if we can get that done, then we can build that circuit. But we just got to give kids more opportunity. I look at it like tennis in the state of Texas. Tennis is in the spring and the fall. It's coached by a high school coach, and the junior high kids come to the high school in the majority of the big districts. Well, why can't we have the throwing coach or somebody else, work with those junior high kids and kind of work with them boys and girls to maybe see what they can do in the fall and maybe take them to 1 or 2 meets. So when they become freshmen or ninth graders, they have a strong foundation, because it's the same concept of your varsity football coaches or your head coach going down to the 8th graders and in a single high school with one middle school and running the same offense.
Right.
And implementing the same plays and the same formations and all that type of stuff. So when they get to the high school, they already understand the system. Well, who says that we can't do that with track? Because in my opinion, in high school in the state of Texas, track and field, but especially throwing, unfortunately, is kind of the odd man out. And I just, it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like track and field and throwing is of the purest of competing out of an individual sports. And there's so much they can take from track and field and apply it to other sports. But other sports seem to want to keep those kids away from track and field.
Yeah, they figured that out in Europe, where it's called athletics, and we just haven't really gotten there yet. Last question, and then like I said, we can talk without the recording. But last question, what's next for the podcast? Who do you have in the next couple episodes? Season 2, 3? What's next?
Well, we have coming out Sunday will be Eileen Vanissi. 8-time All-American at University of Texas Hall of Famer. Great story.
Olympic trials.
We're also going to finish season 1 with an opportunity of just the coaches. So I've expanded to the North at the Thorn Factory, and that's led by Coach Zach Fleming. And then we've just expanded with the East at the Thorn Factory, and that's over in Mesquite, East Dallas, Sunnyvale area, and that's ran by Jarvis Richmond. And so the last episode of season 1 will be all of us coming together, kind of an intro for those guys and, what's moving forward with the Thorn Factory and what we're going to do with that. We're looking, like I said, maybe at Regina Kavanaugh in season 2, Mike Stoltz in season 2, a couple of college coaches at season 2, just anybody that has a unique story that they want to share that's the connection with Texas and throwing. We'll have them on, and then maybe tie in some weightlifting, Olympic lifting stuff, and some of that stuff that goes in with it, and something like that.
Awesome. Well, the club, the podcast are both doing great. You're doing great work for the track and field community in Texas, and we wish you nothing but the best. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for what you do for your website. Thank you for everything that you do for the state of Texas as well. We love your website. I'm on it every day. So
appreciate it.
It's a great
Thank
site.
you.
So take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Here we go.